Hi everyone and welcome to the Lure Fishing Project. This week I am joined by Nathan Butcher from the Butcher's Bite YouTube channel, and we are breaking down how he targets mulloway on Lake Macquarie. Now Nathan hasn't actually been fishing for that long, but he's actually put a huge amount of time on the water and has already had some incredible success chasing all sorts of fish. In this episode we get right into where to find them, the structure and the bait he's looking for, the lures he uses, how he rigs them and retrieves them, and plenty of little things he's learnt along the way. And even if you don't fish Lake Macquarie, there's a heap in this conversation that you can take away and apply to chasing mulloway in your own system. So if catching a mulloway on a lure is on your list, this is a pretty good place to start. Let's get into it. Here we go.
Welcome to the Lure Fishing Project, where Australia's best lure anglers share their tips and stories to help you catch more fish and have more fun on the water. Here's your host, Andrew D.
Hi, Nathan, and welcome to the show, mate. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Mate, I've been jumping on your YouTube channel and having a look around, mate. You've got some cool clips there. Caught a few fish lately too.
Yeah, we're always out there, mate. Always looking to improve. So, I'm getting a few on the boat lately. It's been good.
And as we were talking before, I was watching a video from a couple of weeks ago, maybe 10 days ago. You caught a bunch of fish, and then over the weekend you caught a bunch as well.
Yeah, it's been good, mate. It's the lake. It's very up and down, but when it's on the up, it certainly rewards you.
Very, very good. All right, so as the listeners will be aware, we are here to talk about mulloway or jewfish on Lake Macquarie. But before we get into that, we're going to go through a little bit of a getting to know you segment, just so people who may or may not be aware of you get a feel for who you are. So let's start out with fishing, mate. When did you first start fishing? When did you first pick up a rod?
So seriously, about mid-January, just over 18 months ago was when So I haven't been fishing real long in the scheme of things, but we've made up for it with the amount of hours we spent on the water in that time.
I was going to say, look, in watching what you caught a lot of fish, this has got to give people hope. So I see you fishing out of a boat. Did you fish land-based first, or did you decide to just go and buy a boat and get into it?
Mate, I blame my wife, but it was her. Due to my other, I get a bit obsessed with things, and one of the things I do outside of this is develop dogs for government agencies, and obviously with that, we have a lot of dogs coming and going at our place, and we have a few dogs ourselves, so we're unable to go on a honeymoon. And it was her doing was, why don't we get a boat? The lake's beautiful. It'd feel like we're going on holidays. Let's go get a boat. So
that's a great deal. Let's just go and buy a boat.
And then from there, one of my good mates, he decided to take us out on the lake, show us around, and he took us squidding, of all things.
Yeah, right.
And anyone that knows me, I get drawn to things that I'm not good at, and I love the diagnostic and the troubleshooting side of things. On that particular day, he was flicking lures. He got a couple of flatties. Me and Taylor were squidding. She was getting squid, and I didn't catch a single thing. And that's where it started. I was like, there's got to be, what am I doing wrong? We're using the same jigs. Am I doing... Mate, the questions started, and that's where the addiction started.
So what did Taylor say when she was catching fish or squid and you weren't? What was going on then?
Just the usual banter, mate. She definitely made it known, and assured me it was all skill and not luck.
Okay. And did she get squid ink all over her?
No, my mate, he handled it for her. Oh. And I was just out there casting into nothing, catching nothing.
So good. But in reality, it's not a very long time ago. All right. Now you also, I'm sure you've done a bit of bait fishing and what have you. Tell us about lure fishing. Why'd you sort of veer over into lure fishing a bit?
Well, to be honest, the lures, that's what my mate had first shown us. And just the whole hunting aspect of it. I suppose you're actually, with a bait, it's a lot of, soaking the bait, as they say, waiting for the fish to hit. And I just much preferred the idea of actually working the lure, hunting it, all the different, just a lot more variables, I suppose, and a lot more to think about as well. And yeah, to be honest, I would have never ever bait fished ever if I didn't start the YouTube channel. It was just that I'd made a commitment. I was going to do one video a week for 12 months to see how I felt about it. And there was times with work and other commitments, I couldn't get out through the day and lure fish, so I would bait fish. So if I hadn't done the YouTube, who knows, maybe I would have never even bothered with bait fishing.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. What in fishing with bait did you learn that helped you with lures? Is there anything in that sort of area?
Presentation, certainly. Patience. There, as far as being a Mulloway podcast, as far as Mulloway, probably the most, I suppose, disheartening thing in a way was I thought if I could catch them with some consistency on bait of a night, that maybe there'd be some correlation to help with my lure fishing. And outside of sort of the bite periods and bite windows and even some of the areas and stuff, there wasn't a whole lot. You know, there'd be spots I could go overnight and get multiple dew and try those same spots in the day, wouldn't even see any bait, nothing. And vice versa, spots that I would see holding bait during the day wouldn't necessarily hold bait during the night.
Okay.
So yeah, sort of, that was something that I found very interesting, that the habits of the Mulloway were very different during the day to the night.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's interesting in itself. And then, like, you're obviously right into the Mulloway. Did you start with flathead? Or
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mate, to be honest, I started with squid, and
Okay.
looking back now, it's kind of funny, because I got so obsessed with squid because that was the first thing I couldn't catch. I'd go out, I'd go and I'd learn everything there is to know about squid, and then I'd be sending me mates photos of me squid, and whether it was 2 squid, 5 squid, 10 squid,
Yeah.
I thought I was killing it. I was like, "Oi, look at me! I just got 7 squid,"
Yeah,
and they'd all say, "Any fish?" I said, "No. Why would I go and chase fish when I might not get one? Go out and get 7 squid, mate."
Yeah. How good's that? How good's that? Did you get good at cooking squid?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Figured.
But yeah, flathead definitely. Flathead
Mhm.
was probably sort of the bread and butter species with lure fishing. They're an easy target, and honestly, the fundamentals of chasing, say, a flathead on lure, not much is totally different to a dewy.
Yeah.
You've still got to do all the things right. A good flathead will still shake, pull hooks, bust you off. So
Yeah.
still, all the fundamentals for dewies can definitely be learnt chasing good flathead.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's fair. And when did your obsession sort of change, or did it change from flathead to dewies?
Yeah, it did. I suppose when I first sort of got into fishing, that's all you would hear people talk about was chasing dewies, and I didn't even know what one looked like, let alone what it was or the importance. But then I suppose you start to realise in Lake Macquarie especially, that is the pinnacle species. There are some other good trophy fish like your kingfish and good quality snapper, brims, flathead, but I suppose the Mulloway, it's something that's a viable option all year round. You've got to adapt, but it is, as far as fish pull and drag and that trophy fish, that's probably the pinnacle of Lake Macquarie. So from that, when I was getting in, trying to learn as much as I could and listening to podcasts and reading stuff online, the more you look into it, everything kept pointing to dewies.
Yeah.
But what stood out to me the most was anyone that was pretty consistent catching Mulloway, they all said the same thing about once you start to work the species out, they're really viable and can become quite predictable. So I suppose that's what drew it to me. I thought, well, that seems to be the metric that I can use to measure my success. So
Yeah.
and that's what I did.
Fair enough. So given that you've got some runs on the board, what keeps you chasing them?
Consistency, mate. I suppose, like, I'm by no means a master, far from it. I'm just like every other bloke out there. I'm still trying to get better every session. I'm still trying to just chase that more consistency or better consistency. And what the Mulloway are teaching me most importantly is that there are no rules. Everything you think you know, it's just a guideline. Every time I start to think, yep, this is that and this is that, they prove me wrong.
Yeah, okay.
And that just brings more questions. And for someone with my sort of personality, I just keeps me up at night. You know, I can't stop thinking about it. I formulate these plans. I go out and I put it into practice. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. And I mean, we're fishermen, I suppose. We're chasing that next fish. You finally catch first. You might get one that's undersized, but you've caught one.
Yeah.
Then you want to get a legal fish. Then you want to get one that's that next bracket up. And we're just trying to chase bigger and better all the time.
That's right. And one thing that I think would be a pretty cool story. Do you remember your first one?
I do.
Tell us about it.
So first one was actually on bait. And that was something I'd listened to all these podcasts. I'd studied the barometer, the whole lot. And I said to a mate, I really want to go tonight. I think tonight, everything I've read, everything I've looked up, you know, I think this will be good. And we went out and we threw out our baits. We didn't get anything for a while. And we're getting ready to quit. And then the rod just started screaming. Picked it up. My mates made sure the hooks were set. And he knew straight away. He could see the rod tip bouncing and the way it was running. He had a big grin ear to ear, and I'd never felt anything like it. Never felt anything like it. All of my fish up to that point had been just, 40 centimetre flathead and the odd brim and stuff like that. And then it come up to the surface, man. I don't think I've ever been that happy.
It's so cool when they materialise out of the depths.
Oh, it is. You see them red eyes. And then the first one, I still remember the first one on lure as well. It was tiny.
Okay.
It was tiny. It was like, it was I can't remember exactly, but it was maybe high 50s, low 60s.
Okay.
Mate, I did not care. I was just so stoked that I'd caught one that I was over the moon. So, yeah, it was 100%.
Good. No, I think that is very cool. All right, let's just do a quick sort of talk around Lake Macquarie. What are some of the things that you think, or what makes Lake Macquarie a good Mulloway or jewfish fishery? What do you reckon it's got?
Well, I suppose the one thing that certainly helps it is it's one of the fisheries that's stocked quite regularly with the baby Mulloway and the juvenile Mulloway and even some mature Mulloway. It's probably a little bit unique in the sense it doesn't have much tidal flow like your Hawkesbury and stuff like that. And I think that can be a little bit of a reflection in the Mulloway we catch. When looking at sort of similar length models, they don't seem to be as fat or as packed on with the muscle that I've noticed. I think that's due to maybe not swimming. They don't have to swim in the current. They're not building up. But like Mulloway, Lake Macquarie, it's got a lot of bait. It's artificially heated by the power stations. Yep. So that sort of changes things up. It's quite unique compared to other fisheries. So some days it is just like one big bowl of water that's heated at one end and more so tidal at the opposite end. So it's a bit of a can of worms, I suppose.
Okay. And in terms of Lake Macquarie, what sort of areas or structures do you typically look for, or are you looking for bait? If you go searching for a Mulloway, what are you looking for?
It's definitely seasonal, but I mean, we're in winter at the moment. I'm definitely looking for birds, and we got salmon and big tailor schools. That would be the first thing I'm looking at. But generally, any sort of edge, hole, drop off. We've got a combination of a lot of structure. Some's government put in the lake, others is from other people. It's been man-made sort of structure, both legal and illegal, I guess. And then, lots of weed edges, lots of cockle beds. Okay. So they're the sort of things paying attention to.
Yeah, right. And that brings me to another question. Do you have a favourite depth? Is there a magic number for you?
there's no magic number, but I generally, especially this time of year through winter, I'm fishing deeper. So generally between anywhere from 5.5 to 10 meters is where you'll find me through winter.
So pretty deep zone. And what about shallows? What's the shallowest you've caught them?
The shallowest I've caught them is 4 meters.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the shallowest I've caught them, but not very regularly.
Yeah, sure. And that would definitely be where your cockleweed and all that sort of stuff runs, I would imagine.
That's right. Yep.
All right. Then in terms of tide and wind and time of day, what are you looking for? If you could pick the perfect day, what are you chasing?
Well, for me, the perfect day, definitely cloud cover. I like enough cloud cover. On top of that, I hate dead still days. I definitely like enough wind that creates a good surface ripple to a light chop. Anything, the days that your missus loves going fishing, where it's bright, sunny, hot, not a cloud in the sky, water's glassed out. I hate those days. So
that's the days I like.
Yeah, the opposite of that, and I'm happy.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, fair enough. But definitely cloud cover and a bit of chop, bit of surface, breaking the surface. All right, let's roll into some lures. So what I'm going to do is we'll run through one lure at a time and try and work out how to use it, where to use it, how to rig it, all that sort of stuff. So if you had to pick, say, 3 or 4, what would you start with? The first one.
My number one lure for catching, I suppose, anything in the lake, but especially mulloway, it's what I've nicknamed the confidence prawn, and that's the Z-Man 3.5-inch PrawnZ Elite, the unrigged version.
Okay.
They're a slightly bigger profile than, say, your Daiwa Bait Junkie, your 3-inch prawn there. They're quite durable. They've got a lot of little legs that I like to put scent over and all those little moving parts. And because they are that little bit bigger in profile, they've got a touch slower sink rate, and I just seem to have so much success. They're the one lure that I'm always confident with.
Okay. And have you been fishing that for a while, or is that new to you? Or
in the scheme of things, it's probably relatively new, but I'd say I've been fishing with them for the better part of 3 or 4 months pretty consistently. It is a little bit of a sore point in the house. Taylor bought some for me ages ago, and I looked at them and instantly dismissed them.
Yep, no good.
No good. Taylor's bought them. What are these? That's not what I use.
That's the wrong colour.
That's right. And here we are, and they're my favourite lure. So
that can be a common story. All right. So the 3.5-inch prawn. So it's basically a basic prawn shape. Let's run through the rig. What sort of jig head do you think fits perfectly on those for what you're using?
I stick around either a 3.0 or a 4.0 hook size. I never generally go lighter than a 3.8 jig head. Okay. Occasionally, quite often recently, I've been using a 1/2 ounce, and sort of that. Yeah, if I had to pick one, I'd probably go with the 3.8. As just a good all-rounder. But yeah, half or 3.8 with either a 3 or a 4.0 size hook. That's what I'm pairing it with.
And what brand? What's your choice of brands in that? Like, what do you like?
At the moment, I'm using the TT headlocks.
Okay.
I find their hooks to be. I was using the Daiwa Bait Junkie jig heads, but I had quite a number of them where the hook and the jig head were coming loose, especially after some good flathead or dew and that. So I did love those though, because the plastics never slid on them. But I've been using the headlocks for a couple of months now, and I haven't had that happen, and they've been really good so far. So okay.
And are you gluing them on or just using the basic jig?
Just the jig, mate. And I haven't had any issues to date. So
cool. All right. Now, to be fair, look, I've watched a bunch of your videos and I've seen your technique, which is different to the way I would have fished for mulloway. But, obviously you got the runs on the board. Tell us, just in terms of cast and retrieve, what's your basic technique for that lure?
For that lure, Well, I'm just casting straight out as you do, trying to get as much distance as I can. I'm always trying to make sure that when it's sinking to the bottom, that it's always some sort of tension on the line. I've found if they fall with no tension, like you see a lot of people cast out. I suppose this is for any lure really, but if it casts out, they drop the rod tip and the line's slack, the lure spins in the water column. It doesn't present properly. And ever since, making sure that line's under tension, the lure sort of sinks through the water column real nice, get a lot of juice sort of hitting on the drop more often than not.
Yep.
And mate, I don't keep it on the bottom long. The moment it hits the bottom, I'm hopping it. Usually single hops. I haven't found the need for double hops. I don't generally change my retrieve too much. Just quite aggressive single hops, and using them heavier jig heads. They're dusting up the bottom. They're creating a bit of commotion. Yeah, and it seems to work.
Yeah, right. Okay. If you're casting out, you cast it out as far as you can. It hits the water. You're keeping a bit of tension on it. Whereabouts is your rod, like in terms of a clock face? Are you at 9 o'clock, or are you at 10, 11, or 12?
Mate, I hold my rod tip quite high. It'd probably be higher than 9 o'clock easy. Between 9 and 11, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would say after watching your videos, that's probably pretty accurate. And one of the things which you've just said is you're doing a short, sharp lift. Like I reckon you're going from maybe 10 o'clock to 11:30 if you watch the videos. It's sharper than I expected. Yeah. And has that developed over time?
Not really, mate. And to be honest, I can't really take the credit too much for that. That particular style, while it may be slightly different, I think the fundamentals are quite the same. When I first started, I was trying to get into it, wanted it to learn. I booked a charter with the local charter on Lake Macquarie that was just lure fishing, and that was Captain Charters. It's actually another guy that did YouTube as well, Andrew Lowe. So
yeah,
he was where I picked that sort of technique up for, where I learnt that, and then I just over time sort of changed it to suit me, but it's very similar, and that's where I got it from.
Very cool. All right. So we've got the 3.5-inch prawns, 3/8 to half-ounce jig head, 3/8 to 4/0. What's your colour of choice or colours?
Ooh, if I had to pick one colour, I'm going to go with the fried chicken.
Fried chicken?
The fried chicken.
All right. I don't know what colour that is. I'm going to have a look. So basically, for those who no one can see this, but what sort of colour is it?
It's basically, it's a predominantly clear lure, but it's got green through the tail. It's got green, and anything that's green on it is UV. It's got bright. It's got a nice black top on it, or dark top on it.
Yep.
And it's got a lot of green UV highlights. It just seems to work in every condition.
Right, and it's fun to say fried chicken. That's pretty cool.
It's not what you would picture. Like if my fried chicken come out and it was, green, and clear and green, I'd be a bit worried. So, but that would be my number one color. But mate, honestly, I haven't tried every color. I've tried a lot of the colors. I haven't found a color that doesn't work yet.
Yeah.
But closely by that would be the yabby color or the jelly prawn, and they're both predominantly sort of clear with a bit of pink.
Yeah, they're prawn colours, kind of.
They are. They really are. So
these ones, I noticed that it's got a yellow eye, so I'm assuming that's probably a UV eye as well.
It is. Yep.
Yeah, so that'll stand out quite well.
And motor oil. Motor oils.
Yeah.
That one's that one's been as good for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, something about it. All right. Okay, I reckon that, unless you've got anything else to add with that lure, is there anything else that we haven't covered? What about scent?
I'm a big fan of scent. Big fan. And to be honest, in the beginning, I guess I would probably be one of those people that was a bit skeptical
Mm.
because I want to know why and how does it work, and I'd caught heaps of fish without it. And I don't think it's a magic pill. Like, I don't think it's a magic bullet where you just put it on and you get the bite. It doesn't work that way, but I definitely think it does help, certainly, especially on the shutdown days, even on the days where the fish are biting good. Not so much getting the bite, but the way they take the lure. I've noticed a lot of flathead were always pinned in the top lip, but I've noticed so many, normally, even the ones that swallow it down, once they realise it's fake, they're quite happy to spit that lure straight back out. However, since using the scent, and I use the Strikers stuff, the UV and glow gel, and I also use their Pro Scent, and I've noticed between those two, not only is the flathead or the mulloway, they've inhaled it, you're trying to remove the lure and they're still trying to suck it back down. They still haven't clued on that it's not real.
Yeah,
So,
right.
so for me, that was probably the biggest turning point where I'm like, hang on a minute. They're still trying to inhale it like it's real. They've been hooked, they've been ripped out of the water, and they still want it.
They still want it. They still think it's a meal.
Mm.
Yeah, that's interesting. Tell me, I didn't catch the brand.
Strikers. Tony, he's just like us, mate. Another Aussie, another fisho, and he's been developing it for quite some time. I was lucky enough to try it, and it's just hard to deny the results. When something's working and it keeps working,
Yeah.
well, it gets a place on my boat.
Yeah, nice. And that's available kind of everywhere.
Yeah, it is. It was just online, but he's managed to roll it out to quite a few local tackle shops. Our local Hot Tackle, they've got it in store. And, mate, it's always good just to back an Australian product made for Australians by Australians, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, while you were talking there about the fish, tell me about what you do. So you cast out, you let it sink down. When you get a tick or a bump, what do? Do you belt the hook in? What's your plan there?
I strike immediately.
Yeah.
Straight away. 90% of the time, 90% of the time, that rod just folds and starts screaming.
Yeah.
The other 10%, I've had a couple where it almost feels like a flathead, and you're like, oh, there's a lot of weight here, it's staying deep, and then all of a sudden it wakes up and it just screams. And once you've caught a few mulloway, you know it's a mulloway.
You know pretty quick.
Pretty quick.
I mean, when you were talking about bait, this is one of the great things about fishing with lures. You don't get the stingrays and those other bycatch that you typically don't want, which
That's
you would
right.
have had while you're bait fishing.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Shovel nose and all the rest of it.
Yeah. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask, so with this Z-Man PrawnZ Elite, the one that Taylor gave you that you discarded, tell me about the first time you went, oh, wow, this is going to work.
I just started laughing, and I'm like, I'm going to have to tell her. And I could already hear the way the conversation goes. I knew I wasn't going to hear the end of it. And yeah, it's a bit of fun. Me and her, we have a good time. And I even got her out recently, and she's like, where's my lures? They're her lures. She put them on. She got a couple of fish. She's a big fan too.
Fantastic. That is awesome. I like it. It's a great way to start. All right, let's move forward on to the next one. What's your next favourite?
My next favourite, I mean, you can't go past soft vibes. So I predominantly use the Samaki Vibelicious in the fork tail.
Right.
Anywhere from 70 to 100 mil, but I generally like sort of the 85 is a pretty good all-rounder.
Pretty happy medium.
Yeah.
Okay. And tell us with that, what's the go with your cast and retrieve? How would that be different to maybe a soft plastic jig head setup?
The retrieve, definitely. I pretty much only slow lift the vibe. That's all I seem to do. It works, and I don't rip them. I basically lift as little as possible, as much as needed, as if I'm talking sort of speed. As long as I can feel it vibrating, that's enough for me. I don't want to rip it fast through the water because they have a habit of blowing out and trebles fouling and stuff like that. So I only go as fast as I need to feel it vibrating, and that's it.
And then you sort of drop the tip. Is that the plan? Or are
No,
you slow winding?
mate, I just lift up. I do a small wind just to stay in contact with it, and same thing, I'm letting that fall under a bit of tension on the line.
Yeah, so rod tip up. In terms of colour with the Samaki, you got a colour of choice?
It was always motor oil was my favourite. I was lucky enough to become good mates, and he's a good mate now. One of the fellas, Luke, some people know him as Clemo, that works at the tackle shop. Me and him get on really good, and he introduced me to a colour pearl shrimp, which has become a staple as well. I absolutely love that colour as well. So if I have two vibes on my boat at any time, it's always pearl shrimp and motor oil.
Okay, interesting, interesting. Well, I'll tell you, with those, I don't know the colours, but one of the favourites we've had is the yellow one with just vertical stripes,
Yep,
and the
yep,
orange one.
yep.
Same deal. One thing that we didn't touch on with both these, and it's probably relevant, is what sort of lines and leaders you're running. And the reason I ask that, it comes into sink rates and stuff.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. For my vibes, I'm generally won't go any lighter than 16 pound leader, and I go as heavy as 20 pound. Especially this time of year with Taylor and how expensive they are. I don't like having to replace them, so I definitely run the heavier leader, and I don't think it affects. I haven't found it to affect the bite at all. Braid wise, oh well, soft plastic. I'm running anywhere from a 12 to 14 pound leader.
Yeah.
I was running sort of 10s and 8s at times, but yes, this time of year getting bit off too much, flathead, getting through it.
Mm,
And something that's important to me is having the fish. Like, I don't keep a lot of fish,
sure.
I release a lot. And I know that, it's a bit more sporting to go the lighter gear, but I don't like losing fish. I don't like losing gear. And if I can get the fish in before it's well and truly exhausted, especially the Jew, a lot of them give it their all. They just release so much better when I'm using that heavier gear. So,
Heavier gear. Okay.
uh,
All right. And rods, you got a particular favourite rod for this sort of stuff, or rods?
mate, because my channel's based around it's based around helping people and those getting into it. As I love expensive and high end stuff as much as the next bloke, but I try to keep it all entry to mid level stuff that anyone can afford. So
Mm.
I use, if I had a sort of a size, it's that 2 to 4, 2 to 5 kilo range, or 6 to 12 pound is my preferred rod.
Yep.
7 foot. And where I save my money on the rod, which I sort of didn't just talk about then, is I spend that money I save on the rod and reels and that on my braid. So
Sure. Okay.
I'm a massive fan of Daiwa Expedition. It seems to be a really good braid. But one thing I noticed in the cheaper braids, for example, you can get, say, Daiwa's cheaper J braid and it's 8 pound, but the actual line diameter is still 0.13 of a mil.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I can spend that little bit extra. I can get the 12 pound Expedition and it's 0.13 as well. So I've got the same diameter, but I've got a much better breaking strain.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess for the thinner lines, your lure sinks more naturally and you've got better contact.
That's right. And then you're getting, they've got a bit more salt resistant and stuff like that. So you are getting a better product and you're not sacrificing on anything.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about your reels, mate. What sort of reels are you running?
So basically, I run the same sort of principle as what I spoke about with the rods. I don't like to run, like, don't get me wrong, I love a Certate or a Stella or a twin pair as much as the next fella. But again, because I'm sort of catering to, I want to help people that are sort of, I want to reduce as many barriers to entry as I can. Size wise, 3,000 is probably my perfect, that's my preferred size, but I do like 2,500s as well.
Yeah.
And in terms of brands, I'm a big fan of the Daiwa stuff, like the TD Blacks, the TD Souls. Even the Excellas aren't too bad. And Shimano-wise, I'm a big fan of the Naskis. They're probably my sort of, on the lower end of things, they're sort of my preferred. They've got a really nice drag. They're not going to break the bank. and they do feel really good to use.
Yeah, yeah, no, that is very cool, very cool. With the 3000, are you running those to get sort of that deeper spool, a bit more line on the spool? Is that the idea?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did get caught out when I first started. I thought I got an unreal deal off Marketplace, this Vanford, but it was a shallow spool, and I learned the hard way.
It's for your brim lures, mate. It's all right.
Yeah.
And with the Vibelicious, why not the thumper tail? Because that's what I thought you were going to say.
I do use them if I'm fishing at that little bit shallower,
Mm-hmm.
because they do seem to sink a little bit slower.
Yeah.
But I generally don't fish that shallow for Mulloway, so I generally don't use them anywhere near as much.
Okay. And in terms of your fishing evolution, when did you start to fish the Vibelicious? Was that early on, or was it? Where was it?
It was the first lure I used. I couldn't catch a fish on a soft plastic to save myself.
Yeah.
So I just stuck with the vibes. I kept catching with the vibes, and yeah, I think they're a great entry level plastic lure.
That's it. And with those Vibelicious, especially the sort of 70 or 75s, I can't remember how big they are, but as a podcast here that started as a brim fishing project, you would have caught some cracking brim on these.
Hey, I have, and brim's a bit of a sore point for me. I know
Okay.
everyone loves them. It's just every time I get them on the boat, they just poo all over it, and it was just driving me nuts. And even catching some of them, I thought, they do fight quite hard, and I can see the appeal in that sense. But I thought I've got a good flathead, or I've got a nice fish here because it's fighting and the drag's going, and it was a brim. So
It's
I'd
a
be
stupid brim.
yeah. But yeah, no, I haven't caught. I suppose in the brim world, I haven't caught that many good ones. Like I've caught a few in the 40s, like in the low 40s, but not a whole lot. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Well, mate, if you hit the 40, you're around a kilo, so that's pretty decent.
Yeah.
So I think the Vibelicious, I think, or that style of lure is definitely a staple for anyone that wants to catch a jewfish. I think it's a great place to start, even if it is on, let's just call it a little bit more expensive side per bait, but they definitely catch fish and you'll get a lot of species on, which I think is very cool.
That's right. Yeah, everything hits them.
That's right. All right, let's roll on to the next one.
Next one, I'm a big fan of curltail grubs.
Really, for dewies?
Yeah, I've caught quite a few dews on the curltail grub. And I like them for a number of reasons. If you're a beginner looking to get into Mulloway and you're trying to make the transition, if you're like me and you started with a vibe and you want to get into soft plastics, they're probably the perfect crossover lure because they lend themselves so well to the same style of retrieve as a vibe, that nice slow lift. You don't have to rip them. In fact, if you do sort of aggressively hop them, I find more often than not the tail gets caught on the hook.
Okay.
And yeah, just that really nice flutter of that tail through the water column on the drop, you get some nice dew hit them. So, and you get good snapper, flathead, everything hits them. But I think, yeah, they're definitely a lure that I wouldn't count out for Mulloway.
Okay. And what's your brand of choice and hook size and all that sort of stuff? And
Originally I was using the Daiwa Bait Junkie 4-inch grub, but it seems they're getting harder and harder to get, and I got told that they were ceasing to produce them. So I've moved over to the Z-Man curltail grub in the 4-inch and also the 5-inch.
wow.
And they seem to be, I've just as good, if not better. 4 or 5-inch doesn't matter. The only thing I change is just obviously a smaller hook size. I'm sticking with generally a 3/8 weighted jig head and a 2/0 size hook for the 4-inch, and same sort of thing, 3/8 with the slightly bigger hook, 3/0 or
That's 3.0.
for the 5-inch. Yeah.
And how do you go with those size hooks in dewies, like in terms of not straightening them?
Mate, I haven't had one straighten one yet. Yeah.
Okay.
In saying that though, I generally start with a relatively tight drag or heavy drag, And I immediately, once I've got a good hook set, jew's running, I'm always backing my drag off and making sure that it gives before anything else.
Okay, and can you explain again the reason for that? Why you'd start heavy and go light?
So I start heavy so that I get a good hook set. I make sure it's pinned. Obviously, Mulloway, flathead, they have hard mouths, so we want to make sure we get a good hook set. But because we are on light gear, we're on those sort of 6 to 12 pound, 2 to 5 kilo rods. We're on that 12-pound braid, 14-pound leaders and things. I just want to make sure my drag gives. It's before my knots or my line or anything like that. And we're in Lake Macquarie, so it's not like they're going to run you into a rock wall or a reef or anything like that and bust you off. So you can afford to let them run and lighten that drag so that it's going to go before any of your knots or anything else.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So with these, it's basically cast it out as far as you can. Now, is it I think you said it's a slow lift, the same as the Vibe versus the sharp lift.
That's right. Yeah, I treat it the exact same as a Vibe.
Right. Okay. And in terms of depth of water, do you have a preferred option, or you just weight the hook accordingly? Or
again, mate, it's generally just 3/8 because I'm always sort of fishing. Like that 3/8 is such a versatile weight for Lake Macquarie. You're generally never fishing deeper than 10 metres, and the average depth is probably that 7 metre mark. So, yeah, it always sticks to 3/8.
Yeah, okay. All right. That's cool. This is another one that I like because people can go and buy a packet of hooks and a packet of jig heads, and they'll get their 5 or 7 baits and run with that for a session or 2 or 3 and catch a bunch of fish. I think it's an effective way to go and target not just the Mulloway, but also, like you said, the flathead and larger brim and flathead and snapper.
Yeah, that's right. And they're very durable lures. You cast them out, you catch fish after fish, and they look just the same as if the first time you put them on. So, it's not like the gulps where they were sort of 1 fish per lure. They're quite durable, and that makes them very cost effective.
And once again, your rod tip up, so it's important to keep tension on the line so you don't miss the bite, because with the Dewey, they'll suck it in and spit it out before you know what's going on.
That's right. That's exactly right. You often feel it. It's almost, is it hard to say? Maybe sometimes it is like you feel that sort of just that clunk, and immediately it's a hook set straight away, and off they go, and it's just textbook Jew.
Yeah, beautiful. Love it. All right, let's go through. So you got one more lure. What's the last lure in your top 4?
Last, I'd have to go with a paddle tail.
Okay.
A 4 or 5 inch. A 4 or 5 inch would be sort of preferable. Yeah, the Z-Man diesel minnows, they're a great lure. I don't mind the bait junkie paddle tails as well. They're not bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, them diesel minnows, they've certainly got some runs on the board for sure.
Sure. Okay. And in terms of colours with the diesel minnow?
Pearl, the white one.
Okay.
That seems quite good. Motor oil's good. Mullotron, I do like the Mullotron colour.
I like the name.
Yeah, and we do in Lake Mac, we do get the big mullet schools coming through, and yeah, it sort of matches the hatch quite well.
Okay. And is there a difference with the take on those where, grub versus Vibe? Do you find they hit one differently?
No, not really. There always seems to be a bit of a clunk and away they go, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, very cool. All right. So you got a 4 or 5 inch lure. Are you back up with your sort of 3 to 4-0? Is that where you're at?
Generally a 4-0.
Yeah.
And I do find with the paddle tails, I more often than not do go that little bit heavier on the jig head. So I sort of start at 1/2 ounce. I just find that slightly heavier jig head just really gets them swimming a bit quicker, gets that tail thumping through the water column, and it just seems to be more effective.
Yeah, okay. And with that, I'm not sure what you said, but when it hits the bottom, are you a sharp lift or a slow draw?
They're probably one of the only lures where I do really mix it up. I double hop them, I single hop them, I slow lift them. I sort of really do mix it up. Mate, to be honest, if we're using, I'd predominantly use them through tailor schools and things like that. And the reason being is that the other retrieve that I don't mind with them is just slow rolling it through the school.
Okay.
I've had a bit of success with that. I just find that the tailor will still pick at it and things like that. And sometimes that, I don't know if it's drawing attention. The Mulloway sort of goes, oh, what's that going on? And then they hit it. But I also find that you don't get bit off as much. You know, sometimes when you're slow lifting or doing the aggressive hops, it's moving that fast. The tailor comes through and they bite above the lure and get your line. So your paddle tail having that ability just to slow roll it through them sort of avoids that, but you still can a good chance of catching a jewie.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So I think that probably covers the 4 lures. The only thing I didn't ask, if we've got to jump back to the grubs, is what colours. Do you have any favourite colours there?
Yeah. The Houdini colour is unreal. Motor oil, love motor oil. It's just a good all-round colour. Sort of, you can use it in any conditions. They're probably my 2 favourites. Yeah, the Houdini one's quite special. It's a bit different. It's like a sort of off browny colour, but it's sort of a little bit translucent with a nice sparkle and through it, speckled. It just seems to be, it's quite a natural looking lure, but not. I don't know. I had a lot of luck with that lure.
Yeah, okay. I think with what we've listed here, we've given people a good base to go out and buy, if they really want to do it, a bunch of lures and to set them up for success.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think you could go wrong with any of those lures, to be honest.
Yeah, it's very, very good. All right, let's jump into your boat, mate. What are you fishing out of?
So I'm fishing out of a Quintrex Renegade 420, just a side console, pretty popular tinny.
Yep.
That's my vessel.
Pretty basic. All right, but mate, there's something that's pretty key about your boat, and that I think from watching you videos, talking to you, that makes a big difference in terms of catching and locating jewies is your electronics. Let's start with what you're running. What have you got on the boat?
So electronic-wise, I've got my Lowrance HDS Pro, the 12-inch, and a Minn Kota electric motor.
Hi guys, just jumping in here quickly. I've taken the next part of my conversation with Nathan out of the public episode. We go pretty deep into how he uses his sounder and side scan to find structure, locate bait, and ultimately find Mulloway on Lake Macquarie. The full conversation is available in the extended version for members of the Lure Fishing Project Collective and Vault, and Nathan is also making it available through the Butcher's Bite members page on YouTube. So if you want to hear the extra section, you can jump over to either of those. For now, let's get back to the interview where I asked Nathan about some of his most memorable Mulloway. That's one thing we haven't spoken about. Tell us about your biggest fish or the most memorable fish.
So biggest would be a 1.17 metre. That was bait though.
Okay, that's all right.
The most, if we're talking Mulloway and most memorable, I went out with one of my mates who's also one of my neighbours one afternoon, and we're having a flick for some lures, and we weren't getting much, and we sort of had a bit of a joke, me and him. Whenever he come on my boat, he said I was stitching him up. Like, he was a good luck charm for me. Whenever he was on the boat, I'd always seem to get a jew, but he'd seem to get nothing. And anyway, we weren't catching too much on lures. There was a huge mullet school, and I did have some bait gear on the boat. We ended up catching some mullet, and we rigged them up, put a stinger hook on as well, and threw out this live mullet, and I wasn't real happy with where I cast it and everything. So we started winding the mullet in to throw it out and reposition the boat and everything. And as we're bringing this mullet in, we felt this clunk, and then it just started screaming. And we both looked at each other like in pure disbelief, going, surely not. I'm like, mate, this feels like a jew.
Yeah.
Anyway, it ended up being a 1.12 metre jew.
So a good one.
A good one. Yeah. And I was like, well, there you go.
Wow.
So that was quite memorable for sure.
Okay. And what about Taylor? She caught a few good ones?
She's caught some legals in the 70s. No monsters, but yeah,
Oh,
she's flat out holding the rod, so she's
nice.
done well.
All right. So we've worked through a bunch of lures and a bunch of different ways to target Mulloway on Lake Macquarie. Is there anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, we spoke about the birds being sort of the most predominant way, especially with the bust ups with the tailor and salmon schools. Obviously, we know we've touched on the structure, cockle beds, edges, holes, drop offs, all that sort of thing. But the other ones that sort of go hand in hand is obviously they travel. They have their pass that they travel and scanning for them. And that sort of brings me to some of my, I guess, some other memorable moments I've had while fishing. I've, using that side scan is a really good way to do it. And more often than not, it's not my preferred way to target them, but it is a good way if the bite's a little bit slow or, instead of racing back to the boat ramp, I'll just troll along with my side scan, my sonar, and, you're driving along nice and slow, doom scrolling, you look down, and 30 metres out to the left, there it is. There's, could be 4, 5, 6 sort of marks.
Mm,
And given that it's Lake Macquarie and the size of the marks, you've sort of got a pretty good idea that they're going to be Mulloway.
sure.
The tailor schools are much larger. The salmon schools are much larger. This time of year as well, there's not too many kingfish about. So you locate those, and that sort of was where one of my turning points where I've really started to gain confidence in what I was actually seeing when I was able to confirm it. Driven along, I've marked them up, I've reset up a drift, I've cast into where I thought they were, and before you know it, boom, you've hooked up, you've got a Jew on the boat, and you go, okay, it's as easy as that.
That's what I was going to say. That's a bonus, Dewey.
Yes.
100%. Okay. So let's just dial that back a stretch. So you're trolling along. Do you have a preferred speed?
Yeah, I sort of I have it in kilometres per hour, and I'm sort of anywhere from 4.5 to 6.5 k an hour.
Okay. Okay. So that's not slow necessarily. So but yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
any sort of faster, you can sort of lose the image on your side scan a little bit. And I've got my side scan out to 40 or 50 meters either side, so
Yeah.
I do need to go that touch slower to
Sure.
maintain the integrity of the picture.
Yeah, that's cool. And how are you? Like you've been doing this just a little while, relatively. How are you if you see it on your side scan? How do you put your cast on the fish? How do you like? Is it just a feel or?
Generally, I'm just the way I've set my sounder up. Once I place that mark, I've also can see where it is on the chart plotter in relation to my boat. And then from there, it's just a matter of looking at what way the wind's blowing and just an educated guess to set up my drift so that I'm going to get it near enough. And I mean, you got the wind behind you as well, so you can really punch a long cast out and start fanning that area.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that makes sense. So you spot it, mark it, turn around, whatever you're going to do, reposition to try and angle it in the best way to target those fish.
That's right. It doesn't always work. Sometimes they're on the move. If they are on the move, I'll try and mark them like at least twice so I can get a bit of an idea of what direction they're going in. But sometimes, mate, when they're on the move, even with 100 metres of ground you're covering, you just cannot find them. Once they go, they're gone.
They're gone. What makes you say one's on the move and one's not on the move? Is there a difference on the sounder?
Yeah, I'm able to sort of relocate them on the side scan again and again and again, and I can start to keep marking, and obviously I form a bit of a trail on where they're headed. But other times, mate, they're there, and for love nor money, I can't find where they've gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very, very cool. I reckon that's a great bonus tip. All right. So, mate, as we bring this, we've got a couple of questions after this, but as we bring it to a close, I want you to give a shout out to any of the people that help you, because I know there's a few people that have helped you along the way.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, any product I'm a big believer, like if I don't believe in a product, I simply just won't endorse it. So if there's a rod or reel or anything like that, I won't back it. If there's any product I don't back. So if you're watching my channel, if I'm using something, I can't script it. I'm genuinely using it. So, Tony from Striker's Scent, I love his product. It's got a permanent place on my boat. So shout out to him. Obviously the boys at Hot Tackle, they're a local tackle shop. They're always great prices. They always look after me. Special shout out to Luke as well. He's one of the staff there. And in my journey, not so much Lake Macquarie, but, Newcastle Harbour and a lot of other stuff, he really took me under his wing when he didn't have to, showed me a lot. So I suppose I'm not just appreciative for the people that sort of have helped me product-wise, I suppose, but also the people that have helped me along the way with my journey. And, mate, it's only been a little over 18 months, but I've met some fantastic people, the Vela family. They've helped me and Taylor out a lot. Heaps of mates. There's so many to list. They've all been a huge help when it comes to that. Obviously, I love the Z-Man products. They're great lures. They've only just recently sent me out a couple of things to try, which has been pretty cool. And mate, but if I've got to thank any one particular person, it has to be the wife. A few mates often joke, make sure you don't get divorced. She does give me a fair bit of leash. She supports me 100%. And I get her out on the boat. We have a great time, and I can't thank her enough for giving me the opportunity to be even able to put the hours in and hold the fort at home, because without her, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Fantastic. All right, mate. The way we're going to finish this up is, as we're trying to teach people how to go and catch a mulloway on Lake Macquarie, for someone that's listened to the podcast and heads out on Lake Macquarie in the next little period, what would be 3 things that you would like them to remember to help them catch a mulloway?
The first thing, you have to start at the start. Make sure you're using the correct gear. Make sure your knots are good. Your lures are rigged correctly for starters, because if you don't have any of the basics down and you're not in contact with that lure, it doesn't matter if you land on 100 mulloway, you're going to lose them. You're not going to hook up. So that would be the number one thing. Of all the different methods we've spoken about, I think the best way you could go about it would be to look for the birds and the bust ups, because you're not going to need to heavily rely on your sounder to do that. It's not an additional skill you need. You can just look for the birds. You can cast into it, and you're going to be a pretty good chance of catching a dewey that way.
Mm.
And I suppose the third one, I've listened to a lot of podcasts, and everyone's tips, they're all so cliche, but they are also true. And I suppose, you always hear people say, you've got to put in the hours. There are fish of this many casts. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. And I think that's definitely true. But I think it can be quite easy when chasing your first mulloway or chasing any sort of consistency. I think it can be quite easy to get disheartened. And I've found the best way to combat that and to always move forward is to change your perspective. So rather than walk away from the session feeling like, I didn't get one or it didn't work, I've learned just as much from the sessions I don't catch, if not more than the sessions I do. And I think if you can view every session as, what did I learn? What were the conditions? What was the moon phase? What was the tide doing? What was the wind doing? If you can document all that and start to form your patterns and go, well, it didn't work on this, so I'm going to change one variable, I think you'll always gain something from your sessions, and bit by bit, that data will get you closer and closer and closer to getting your first fish, or at least getting a bit more consistent when chasing them.
Yeah, wow, that is very cool. Mate, unfortunately, you've raised a couple of questions. How do you document it? It was one of the things I wrote down before you answered. It's like, I'd forgot to ask, do you keep a diary, or how do you do that?
I do. At the start, I wrote everything down, and then I went to like screenshotting. Like if I had a good session, I'd screenshot the barometer for the day, the moon phase, the tide, the wind, the whole lot, Generally now, though, I sort of tie my sounder in as well. So I might mark on that mark, I might put whatever in the description of that mark, if I've had success, I'll just write down what part of the tide, the wind, the moon, just as a bit of a guide. You can jump in the lake, and it's not always a given either. There's so many factors that are at play, but I can jump in and go, okay, it's this part of the tide, have a quick suss on all my marks, and it's this wind, and I can just go check those areas and see if any are holding bait, and that's sort of how I document it.
Yeah, very good. And the other thing is, when you talked about knots, we didn't discuss knots, and we should have. What sort of knots? You would have a leader knot and 1 or 2 or 3 terminal knots. What do you run?
So that's an interesting one. I mean, I run a FG. Originally I was doing double unis and Albertos and Albrights and stuff, but you just can't beat the FG.
Yeah.
And I think I encourage anyone that's serious about chasing Mulloway or just fishing in general. It just runs through all your guides, especially if you're using the lighter rods with the smaller eyelets. You'll have less failures in terms of wind knots and things like that. But the interesting point, when I first started, everyone said you have to use loop knots on your lures to get that action. And interestingly enough, I got sick of tying loop knots, and I was so much quicker at doing uni knots straight to the jig head. I tied one on, Flatty would scuff the leader and that, and caught Jew, and then I did it again and again. So now I find myself, I don't even bother with loop knots half the time. I just go straight to a uni knot. And I also find I'm getting, with the tailor and things, even the flathead, because it stays fixed on one part of the eyelet, the loop doesn't roll backwards or anything like that. I'm actually finding I'm getting bitten off less. So,
okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I prefer the double uni to my jig head.
The other thing we didn't discuss is your leader lengths. Are you running, how long are leaders? Because that makes a difference with your knots.
I'm generally at least a rod and a half length, so what's metre and a half, something like that.
Yes, but not on the spool.
Yeah.
So Nathan, I've watched a bunch of your YouTube channels, YouTube shows, and there's some great episodes there. Where can people go and find your channel, and also where can they find you on socials?
So the YouTube channel is just Butcher's Bite. I try and upload at least one video every week, and I do have the members section where I just try to give a little bit back, a little bit extra to those that, I'm grateful enough that they support us that little bit extra. And then for my day-to-day sort of stuff, I've got the Butcher's Bite Fishing Instagram page and Butcher's Bite Facebook page, and that's just where I put up, my posts. You sort of get to interact with me on the day-to-day, and I just talk about different things that I feel, I suppose, where we're at and things that don't get talked about enough, the most common things in fishing.
Absolutely. All right, mate. I reckon that pretty much brings us to a close, mate. Look, I really want to thank you for coming on. I think it's been a great interview in terms of people catching fish on Lake Macquarie, but it's obviously, it'll work on any system you go to. So you don't have to be on Lake Mac to go and catch the Mulloway. If you take some of these basics, I reckon people will get there. So, mate, thank you so much for jumping on.
No, mate, thanks for having me. Like I said, only relatively new in the scheme of things, but, if there's something that someone can take away from anything I've learned, and I suppose you can do it, is probably the attitude you need to have. If I can sort of get this level of consistency this quick, I've had a lot of good people along the way, but don't doubt yourself. Keep putting in the hours, and before you know it, you'll be just as consistent.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nathan, mate. Appreciate you jumping on. All right, and that brings us to the end of this episode of the Lure Fishing Project. Firstly, if you've made it all the way through, thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. I'd really love to know what you thought of this style of episode. We're starting to branch out and cover different species and different style of lure fishing. So if you enjoyed this one and you'd like to hear more episodes like it, please let me know. And if you've got any questions from the episode, feel free to reach out to either myself or Nathan. You can find Nathan over at The Butcher's Bite on YouTube and across his socials. As I mentioned earlier, the full extended version of this interview, including the section where Nathan goes into how he used his sounder and side scan to locate Mulloway, is available through the Lure Fishing Project Collective and the Vault, as well as through the Butcher's Bite YouTube members page. I'll put all those links in the show notes. Thanks again to Nathan for coming on, and thanks for listening. I'll catch you next time on the Lure Fishing Project.
Thanks for listening to the Lure Fishing Project. For extra episodes, the Big Brim series and more, join us at the Lure Fishing Project Collective. We'll catch you next time.